Working for millions of years just to match Elon Musk's fortune sounds impossible, right? Yet this modern billionaire isn't even close to the richest person who ever lived. Throughout history, wealth has taken many forms, from piles of cash to absolute control over entire empires. What if I told you the richest individual might have ruled lands bigger than any country today or controlled resources worth trillions? The story of humanity's greatest fortunes reveals more than just numbers. It unveils power, influence, and a legacy that still shapes our world. Modern wealth and its limits. Elon Musk's fortune is staggering by any modern standard, but putting it into perspective reveals how relative wealth truly is. If an average worker tried to earn what Elon has amassed, it would take them roughly 8 million years of continuous labor, 30 times longer than humans have walked the earth. That's a mind-boggling figure that shows just how concentrated wealth can become today. Yet even with this astronomical amount, Elon is not the richest person in history. That raises the question, how do we measure true wealth across centuries and civilizations? Money today is often measured in dollars and cents, but wealth can take many shapes, making direct comparisons tricky. Elon's fortune, largely tied up in stocks and tech companies, is highly liquid and well-documented, existing in a modern global economy of unprecedented size. But what happens when we look back at times when cash wasn't the whole story? Power, land, resources, and influence sometimes equaled or even surpassed the value of physical wealth. Knowing this, it becomes clear that financial figures alone won't tell the full story. The real challenge is understanding what it means to be the richest. Is it the size of a bank account, the control of vast territories, or something else entirely? Elon Musk is the richest person in absolute terms today, with a personal fortune estimated near $400 billion. But when we stretch our view beyond modern money and into historical power structures, we encounter fortunes so enormous they make even his wealth seem modest. Cash kings of the 20th century. Throughout the 20th century, some figures amassed literal cash fortunes that rival or surpass most modern billionaires. Take Pablo Escobar, for example. At the peak of his power, he was bringing in around $420 million a week. After adjusting for inflation, his net worth reached approximately $80 billion, still less than Elon's by many estimates. What made Escobar's fortune notable was that it was largely held in physical currency, stacks of cash so massive that he spent $1,000 each week on rubber bands just to keep it organized. The cost of damaged cash alone was about $2 billion annually. Escobar's wealth shows one side of the story, raw liquid money piled up in one place. But even before him, the 20th century featured industrialists whose fortunes came from pioneering enterprises and consolidating industries. John D. Rockefeller, who virtually dominated the oil industry with Standard Oil, became the first billionaire in recorded history. His wealth reached a peak equivalent to roughly 2% of the entire United States economy in 1913. After antitrust laws forced the breakup of Standard Oil, Rockefeller still retained ownership stakes in multiple companies, growing his fortune even further. Reliable estimates place his net worth anywhere from $400 to $600 billion today. What follows is deeper. Individuals who held power so vast it transcended bank balances. Power beyond possession. Sometimes the richest person isn't the one with the most money sitting in a vault, but the one who controls entire nations or economies. Joseph Stalin, the Soviet Union's communist leader, owned almost no personal wealth in a traditional sense, no lavish possessions or bank accounts full of cash. By all accounts, Stalin lived modestly, with only simple pipes, a few books, and his uniform as personal property. What made Stalin one of the richest men in history was not his personal fortune, but absolute control over a state economy worth around $10 trillion today. Under his rule, any opposition, even a private joke, could lead to execution or imprisonment. His control was so tight that after his fatal stroke, no one dared call a doctor for 12 hours, fearful of incurring his wrath. Wealth here meant the unfettered ability to command resources, labor, and entire industries. not cash in hand. Adolf Hitler operated under similar principles of indirect wealth through total control, combined with personal income streams. Despite starting homeless and struggling as a young man, by the time he rose to power, Hitler capitalized on royalties from his book and speeches, government mandates buying millions of copies, and tax exemptions. As we move through history, the pattern of wealth's forms changes, revealing new layers beneath what seems obvious. Want to dive deeper into these evolving shifts? Like and subscribe for more insights on the changing landscape of wealth. Dynasties and banking empires. Long before the industrial age reshaped wealth through oil and manufacturing, powerful families built fortunes that spanned continents and generations. The Rothschild family, for example, emerged in the 18th century from a modest Jewish ghetto to create one of the first international banking networks. Before the telephone, they positioned 5 sons across key European financial centers, London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, and Frankfurt, forming a web that financed wars, funded massive projects like the Suez Canal, and bailed out entire countries. The Rothschilds faced unique challenges rooted in centuries of discrimination. Prohibited from owning land or entering many professions, they cleverly focused on financial instruments like stocks, bonds, and government debts, assets less vulnerable to confiscation or destruction. To protect and grow their wealth, they employed marriage within the family, often between cousins, consolidating power while navigating hostile environments. Alongside the Rothschilds was Jacob Fugger, a German banker in the 1500s who commanded immense influence by lending to kings, financing wars, and sponsoring political leaders. Fugger's loans to Emperor Charles V helped secure the throne, and when payments lagged, he boldly reminded the emperor of his indispensable role. His power influenced religious upheaval, as church officials in debt to him sold indulgences that eventually sparked the Protestant Reformation. Yet even these vast banking empires pale beside the riches of rulers who controlled incredible natural resources and vast empires. Ancient fortunes and empire builders. Travel back 7 centuries, and you meet Mansa Musa, the ruler of the Mali Empire, whose wealth is legendary and nearly impossible to quantify. Rich in gold and salt, 2 of the most valuable commodities of the era, Mansa Musa's pilgrimage across Africa in 1324 became a spectacle of unimaginable wealth. He reportedly covered himself, his entourage of 60,000 people, and hundreds of camels with thousands of pounds of gold. As he generously distributed gold along the way, local economies were destabilized, requiring him to borrow the gold back to stabilize markets, only for the cycle to repeat in reverse. Estimating Mansa Musa's net worth is difficult because records come from second-hand accounts, but it's believed he controlled roughly half of the world's gold supply. Common estimates place his fortune near $400 billion, though some claims soar much higher. His reign highlights how ancient wealth was tied directly to natural resources and their control, making him one of the richest people ever to live, beyond just cash or stocks. A century earlier, Genghis Khan ruled an empire covering almost 20% of the Earth's land surface, the largest land empire in history. Yet his personal wealth was modest. He famously shared his spoils with his soldiers to maintain loyalty rather than hoarding riches. His lifestyle was austere, living and dying in tents with no marked grave. Through dynasties and empires, we see how wealth morphs across time, from cash piles to banking power, setting the stage to compare these forms with modern fortunes. Measuring richness across time. Comparing wealth across centuries is a tricky business because economies grow, societies evolve, and the meaning of riches changes. Take John D. Rockefeller, for example. In 1913, he controlled about 2% of the entire United States economy, an amount equivalent to $400 to $600 billion today. By contrast, Elon Musk's fortune, though measured at around $400 billion, represents about 1.4% of today's far larger U.S. economy. Rockefeller's share was a bigger slice of a much smaller pie, highlighting that raw numbers don't tell the full story. Economic size aside, Modern billionaires like Elon Musk hold their wealth as liquid assets that can be accessed or deployed instantly, unlike many historical figures whose fortunes were tied up in land, armies, or intangible power. Ancient rulers like King Solomon or Augustus Caesar controlled vast resources and revenues, but often lacked personal wealth in the modern sense. Their riches depended on their political status, and if that was lost, so was their fortune. Elon's wealth, on the other hand, is documented, personal, and independent of government or military power, making his riches uniquely accessible. From towering empires to modern fortunes, wealth has taken many shapes throughout history. Understanding these differences helps us see that being rich isn't just about money, it's about power, influence, and impact. If you enjoyed this journey through history's wealthiest figures, be sure to like and subscribe for more fascinating stories.